Us is written and directed by Jordan Peele, the same guy that brought us 2017's brilliant Get Out, and stars Lupita Nyong'o, Winston Duke, Elizabeth Moss, and Tim Heidecker. As you can probably tell from that introduction, I was really excited to see Us, mainly because Get Out was just surprisingly good. No one expected it to be as good as it was, and it actually ended up being one of the better films of that year, and that's saying something considering how great 2017 was for films in general. But anyway, now we have Us, which is a kind of different beast in itself compared to Get Out. Get Out I look at more as a thriller than a horror film. It definitely has horror elements to it, but the way everything plays out and the way the plot is structured feels a lot more like a psychological thriller, whereas Us can be considered more as just a straight-up horror with thriller elements. And I will say one thing, just to get the ball rolling, is that I like how Jordan Peele has managed to stick in this one genre for his second film, but make it feel completely different, because a lot of directors, when they come to do their second or third film and stick in the same genre as they did for their debut feature, they can sometimes feel a little bit repetitive in regards to whether it's their style or their directing or their cinematography. Just something will always seem a little bit repetitive. But thankfully here, Us feels like a completely different entity to Get Out. And that's probably one of the biggest praises I can give Us, is that it works as its own thing, and it sets its tone perfectly within the first few minutes and maintains that tone pretty constantly throughout the entire runtime. The tone and the entire atmosphere of Us is genuinely perfect, and I loved every aspect that they did to build upon that tone and that uneasy feeling that you get right from the word go with this film. And while we're talking about positives, the performances in this movie are great from everybody. Lupita Nyong'o, you've probably heard this a million times, but she is probably the best performance in the entire film. She, like a lot of the other actors in this film, have to play a dual role here, because the main premise of the film is a family are going on holiday, but they are then confronted by a family that is literally them, just slightly different in the sense that they want to kill people. And that premise alone had me hooked on the film anyway. But the fact that you've got these incredible performances by Lupita Nyong'o and especially Winston Duke really sell the whole thing even more than I thought it would. Because, like, when I went into the movie, I was like, okay, if anything, the concept is going to be pretty cool at that. But with the performances in hand, they really do elevate this concept to something better than I thought it would be. Because I just went in thinking it was just going to be run-of-the-mill, doppelganger plot. But what this film does, especially in regards to its performances and little nuances that those characters have, is really clever. And like I said, those characters and the performances that those actors give really do highlight the differences between the normal versions and the doppelganger versions. The best you get of this is Lupita Nyong'o, who delivers a fantastic performance as the actual mother, but a really chilling and unnerving performance as the copy version of her. Winston Duke is fantastic in the film as well. He's the dad of the family, and he supplies a lot of the humour in the movie. Sometimes it doesn't always land, the humour in the film, but it's nice to have his character be the one who is trying to make everyone in the situation feel a little bit better, even though the situation they're in is incredibly shitty. He's the one voice of reason that just tries to make them feel less shitty in this crap situation, if that makes any sense. But he did supply a lot of the more entertaining aspects of this movie, and I really liked his performance. The child performances were also surprisingly great in this movie. Usually in a film like this, the child performances can go one of two ways, and luckily here, Jordan Peele knows exactly what he's doing with these child actors, and manages to get really creepy performances out of them, especially when they're playing the doppelganger versions of them as well. I've also got to mention Elizabeth Moss and Tim Heidecker as the parents of a white family, which the main family are friends with. They're really good as well. They're not in the movie that much, but I did like what they brought to the scenes that they were in. The score for this movie is great, it's chilling, and it introduces some new things that I'm not really used to hearing in a horror score before. But yeah, it really works for the tone of the movie. The cinematography in the movie is actually pretty damn good. It's really well shot. Sometimes it can be a little too dark in scenes, but overall I think the look of the film really complements the style and atmosphere that the film is going for. Also, Jordan Peele's direction, especially behind the camera, is really good. I think he's definitely improved from Get Out in a visual sense. He knows just the right times when to show you certain things and when to cut away from things that you don't need to see anymore, and I just love that aspect of this film. I think he's definitely improved as a filmmaker, and that's another positive I can give us, is that you will probably not get everything on a first viewing. This is definitely a film that warrants repeated viewings, and it's because of that style, that way he's directed, that kind of makes you want to watch it again. Because there are a lot of shots in this film that, on first glance, maybe can just seem a bit odd in terms of what he chooses to show you in a certain shot, but in your head, you know that will mean something the more you think about it and the more you rewatch it. Which is why I'm glad I've saved this review until a good few days after I've watched the film, because I saw it on the Friday that it came out, and as you know, I haven't been able to get this review out until Wednesday. So the fact that I've had quite a few days to process the film and really think about the things that happen, I've already started to pick out on some of the smaller things that you maybe just take for granted or just think are just a passing thing, that actually do mean bigger things that are really clever when you really think about it. However, Us is not a perfect film, and unfortunately the main criticism I have about the film is actually kind of the last thing I just said in regards to thinking about things that you've seen in the film and actually processing them. There are a lot of things in the movie, such as odd shots that don't look right or throwaway lines, that when you think about them later on, they have a deeper context that adds another layer to the overall movie, making it just that bit cleverer and more brilliant. And that aspect of the film I love. But that being said, there are a couple of things in the movie, not major things, but just a few things that happen here and there, that when you also think about them in a larger context, don't quite add up. You have those things that warrant thinking about, that are genuinely brilliant, but then you also have these other things that just genuinely don't make logical sense, especially in the grand scheme of things. And when you start to think about things that happen later on in the film, you start going, so hang on, how has that been able to happen without people noticing? And it's just one of those things where, like, you take it for granted when you first see it, but the more you think about it, it's just like, actually, no, I don't think that would have happened. Also, I know I really shouldn't, but I'm gonna have to just for this one point. I'm gonna compare this to Get Out just for a little bit. What made Get Out work so well was its effectiveness in its simplicity. The plot was straightforward. When the twists and turns happened in the movie, they just happened of a natural progression and happened entirely within the film's pace. They just happened as the film went along. And it was a perfect example of showing, not telling. Maybe except one scene, which kind of tells you what's going on, but again, that fits in with the pace and that, and it still also fits in with the show and don't tell rule because of the way that scene was executed. Us, on the other hand, is, again, fairly straightforward on the surface, but once the movie really gets deep into the things that it's trying to get across, especially in regards to its themes and the bigger picture in regards to the overall plot, it can seem a little bit overambitious for its own good. I like the route that it goes, and some of the things do pay off at the end in quite satisfying ways, and I will give it credit for trying those things. It's just that compared to Get Out, its overambitiousness does feel as if it's also a hindrance on the movie as well. And also, comparing this to Get Out, like I just said, Get Out did the show and don't tell rule pretty damn effectively, whereas this movie carries that over for the most part until one scene at the end where you just have this big exposition dump that kind of explains what's really been going on. And it really grounded the movie to a halt, in my opinion, because I was genuinely on board with the film until that happened, and it just felt really, I suppose, lackluster in a way, because, like I said, I was really on board, and then it just kind of goes, intrigue, 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 we'll tell you everything anyway. Whereas Get Out, it was intrigue, 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 we'll tell you kind of what's going on, but still keep the intrigue there. So yeah, for every good thing about Us, there's kind of a negative right round the corner. I do think, overall, I did enjoy my experience with this film. But that being said, Get Out was so much better in almost every other aspect, especially in regards to the plot and how it decides to tell you and show you what the fuck is going on. It was definitely much better handled in Get Out than it was in Us. That being said, I did enjoy Us when I was watching it, and it does feel like a movie that I do want to watch again, just to delve into those other aspects a little bit deeper, and to see if I can pick out anything that I may have missed the first time. Which is why I'm going to give Us a 7.5 out of 10. I can't really go any higher because of the flaws that are holding it back and just genuinely don't make it as entertaining or as enjoyable as Get Out. But that being said, it has enough good things going for it and enough intrigue in its imagery for me to want to go back to it and for me to want to revisit it and delve further into the stuff that it presents. So guys, that was my review of Us. I hope you enjoyed it. If you liked the video, then give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Bye.